and welcome to the Educational Forum. This program is produced by the Massachusetts School of Law at Andover. I'm your host, Michael Coyne. Lawyers have enormous power in our society. They fill our local legislatures, governor's offices, Congress, and the White House. The President and First Lady are both lawyers, as is the Vice President. They also taught in law school. But you know, everyone hates lawyers. But that is until they get into trouble, and then they love them. But I love lawyers. I am one, I'm married to one, and I've had the privilege now for nearly 30 years of working with great lawyers and judges who have done great things, righted wrongs, and fought for justice. Lawyers are superheroes. Think about that one for a minute. Just like Superman and Batman, they come to the rescue of people in great distress. They battle evil, well-armed opponents in the name of justice. And they aid widows and orphans against Wall Street villains and greedy finance companies. So go ahead if you like and hate on us, but make sure you call one of us when your problems are just too great for you to handle. Like Superman, Batman, and the rest of the Justice League, one of us will be there to fight the good fight on your behalf. I've had the privilege now for over 20 years to help produce some great lawyers at this law school, the Massachusetts School of Law at Andover. These individuals aren't the ones you'll ever hear bad stuff about. They came to law school not to get rich, although the money's not going to hurt. They came to use the law to help people, to do the right thing. I want you to meet today's lawyers, the next generation of leaders, and learn why people turn to the law, how the face of law school has changed, and how law schools must change to remain relevant, to make significant contributions to our society. When law school is done right, it can make a significant difference in our society. Our first guest had all the grades, all the recommendations, and excellent work experience working with the federal government in immigration law. But incredibly, one little useless test score stood in the way of her dreams, her destiny, her right to go to law school.
I'm from Bowie, Maryland, and I graduated from St. Mary's College of Maryland. And in my senior year at St. Mary's, I was trying to get in law school. So I was graduating and taking the LSAT and focused on getting to school. And so I had applied to 13 schools initially within my last year at St. Mary's. And I didn't get in because I had scored low on the LSAT. Straight A student, you name it, I was that type of student. But I scored very low on the LSAT. So I realized that the schools were looking at not only your GPA and your personal statement and so forth, they were looking at that LSAT score. And so when I graduated in 2002, I didn't get into any of the 13 law schools I had initially applied to. And then that began my journey from 2002, 2007, trying to get into law school. I had applied to a total of 27 different law schools. I had taken the LSAT 3 different times and scored low 3 different times.
Now, just to be clear, the LSAT is a multiple choice test that most law schools, but not us, use to try and determine who should get into law school, right?
Yes, it's the law school aptitude test. That is the entry-level test you take to get into law school.
It's actually not even called aptitude anymore, it's called admissions. Well,
Wow.
and I'll tell you the reason is because they realize that aptitude really doesn't belong in the title.
Wow.
Because it doesn't show an aptitude to do law work. You've shown otherwise than that. So they changed its law school admissions test.
Wow.
And it's got its many faults. But go on with your...
I was distraught because here I am, 2002, 22, 23, trying to get into law school. I knew I was called to be a lawyer. It's in my blood. I knew it. But having that let down 27 different times.
27 times you were told
different
no.
schools, no. But I had applied to law school 34 times because I applied to certain law schools 3 times or so. So it was a rough time during 2002 to 2007 to get into law school. But
hold on, tell me, how do you keep going after, say, the first 5 or 6? What is within you that says, no, I'm not going to accept this?
Excuse me.
It's okay.
My faith in God and having a dream. When you know that you're called to do something, you're destined to do something in life. At times, you know, the journey can be long. It can be hard, but when you know you're called to do something in life, you keep going. You just keep going. So I was a paralegal at the Department of Justice. I was working in immigration law and still working and still trying to get into law school. And around 2007, I will never forget, I was going to Columbia, South Carolina for training at the Department of Justice. We have training for our paralegals down in Columbia, South Carolina. And before I left for training, I received an email from one of the missions personnel here who sent me an email regarding the school. And so at this point, I had applied to 34 times law school. And I was thinking to myself, Lord, you know, I know if you call me to do this, you'll open up the door. I know I have to do my part, but you're going to have to do something too, Lord.
Meet me halfway.
Okay, meet me halfway. So at this point, I was still trying to get in law school. I was going on travel, like I said, to South Carolina. So I saw the email. I said, okay, Master's School of Law. I didn't know anything about the school. I said, I'll check into it when I come back from travel. I came back from travel. And so I researched the school and found out about its history and what it could offer me. And I still didn't know I wanted to come to Massachusetts. I didn't know anything about the area. And an attorney of mine, I'll never forget, she told me, Clonetta.
Her name was Clonetta? Oh,
no. Her name actually is Joanne Johnson. And she told me, Clonetta, you have applied to law school so many times over the past 5 years. And they were all ABA. And when I told her about this school and that it was a non-ABA school, she said, this is a non-ABA school. If you can't get into a non-ABA school, at least you can say you have tried all avenues. Don't give up. I applied. I came here for the interview process and the admissions process, and the rest is history. Within less than a month, my whole life changed. I had to tell my job I was going on leave of absence in the government, and I literally picked up from Maryland and moved to Massachusetts. And it was the best decision I've ever made for so many reasons. For so many reasons. I can go down a list. First of all, this school, when I came to the school, the admissions process itself was enlightening. It was different. The admissions process of the question and the Q&A was more into how I have established myself as an adult since I've graduated from undergrad. Not so much what does it take to get into school, but the person who interviewed me, he was more interested, well, what have you established as an adult in the workforce? What have you done? Because I believe the school takes into account your experience as a person in the workforce, as opposed to a person that's coming straight out of undergrad. Even though there's nothing wrong with that experience, there's something to be said when you are working in the workforce and you come back to school. You can bring that type of knowledge and experience to your experience in law school. So they were very interested in my background history with regarding immigration law, what I did at St. Mary's. And then it was just enlightening to be able to get into a school where the LSAT was not a big factor.
Wasn't a factor at all.
It wasn't a factor at all, actually. And that had been my situation. I've realized that score was very important because I was a student on the same level as any other student. The great grades, personal statements, everything. But what differentiated me from other students was the score.
You know, what we've found, and it might help to know, is that there really is no correlation between the LSAT score, and you've helped to prove it as well, is the ability to successfully complete law school and be a great lawyer. I mean, look at your own accomplishments here. You're graduating now with honors. You have been highly successful in the trial advocacy teams, competing against schools like Harvard and Syracuse, and more often than not whipping them. And you're graduating with the Dean's Award for significant accomplishments. I mean, it's what's here and here that counts. It's not what a multiple choice test says that you should have the ability to do, because you've proven by a long shot that you're going to be just one terrific lawyer, you know.
Thank you. That was one of the main things I learned in law school, is that once you get into an institution. It's what you do with that experience. If you would have looked at me 3 years ago with that LSAT score, the last LSAT score I took, you would say this student would never achieve what she's achieved in law school. Like you said, of the number of things I've done, you would think that I would be a mediocre student or may not even make it in law school. And to be able to come into the school and prove myself on that capacity without the LSAT or without any other conventional admission means that are used in other schools, it was something that pushed me to be the best I could be. And now graduating, like you said, with honors and so forth, I've realized that no score can define you as a person, what you're going to do academically. You have to take your education to your own hands and help shape it. You mold it like you mold clay. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what you have to do. You take the clay, you mold it. And I came to I came to this school and I said, what do I want to leave behind? How do I want to represent myself and my family in this school? In this school. And that's what I did. Just worked hard and had a great mentor system. Have great professors here who will mentor students and provide not only academic but psychological and social needs. I had great people in my life at this school, including yourself. But definitely, thank you. I want to say thank you. But it's needed.
Tell me what you think the most important lesson you learned about yourself is while you were in law school.
I think I learned, among a lot of things, I learned tolerance. I need an additional dosage of tolerance. Tolerance being tolerance for other people. One thing I realized is that when you're in law school and you see students, you see lawyers in the making, you see character being built in the legal field. Mm-hmm. And what they do now is what they're going to do tomorrow.
That's right.
That's it. And so when you have different people from different areas of backgrounds of life, walks of life and so forth, you have to learn to tolerate what they're bringing to the table and what I'm bringing to the table and work with that. So I had to learn that being in mock trial, Thurgood Marshall, definitely about tolerating different personalities and working together. So the next thing I learned was about teamwork. Like I was always a team player, but I realized in law school, nobody makes it alone. Mm-hmm. You need support.
Thurgood Marshall said no one pulled up their own bootstraps.
And that is so true. Sometimes someone has to be at your foot tying up your boots.
That's right.
And I learned that being on the mock trial team about leadership. A great leader is not a leader because they put themselves out. A great leader is a leader because they make others greater. And I learned that, if you want to be a leader, you have to lead by example. Mm-hmm. And it's not doing something then broadcasting, I did this. People know you're a great leader by what you leave behind.
Some say our justice system is deplorable, the worst in the world. That is, until it's compared with the rest of the world. Of course, only the naive would believe that our justice system isn't affected by wealth, power, or status. But our Bill of Rights guarantees us all some basic minimum protections that people across the globe seek. Like the right to a jury trial, the right to have a fair and impartial jury of our peers hear the case against us. The right to have a judge who can evaluate the evidence against us and instruct the jury as to the appropriate law to use in determining our guilt or innocence. And as important as any other right, the right to a public trial, the right to have members of the public and the press come in and monitor the proceedings to see if we're getting close to our ideal of justice. Albania, a former communist country where people were executed or imprisoned without a fair trial, sometimes without any explanation as to what they had done, and more often than not, without any protections that we come to expect in this country at all. Nothing near justice as any of us would expect to receive. This was the foundation for our next guest's entrance into the legal field. Let's talk to them, find out how their early experiences influenced their choice of coming to law school.
When I go back through these days and through those years, those were horrible years. Well, in America, people were celebrating about the freedom of speech and all the freedoms that the Constitution actually established for the people and enjoying into the United States. We weren't able to speak. We weren't able to think. we weren't able to do anything that a free person should do and should be entitled to do. So I know that some of our relatives were executed for speaking out, and that was a horrible regime. We went through hard times in Albania, and going through that process, I remember myself, I go back when I was 10 years old, 15 years old, and thinking about these injustices, and I would think to myself and say, there will be one day that I'll become an attorney, and this is unjust. It's unjust to punish the right people for the right cause, for what they stood for just the freedom of speech and what they believed. So this feeling, it's been instilled in me, and even after the communism regime fell, like everywhere in the world, I still have that feeling of, being helpful to the community and fight the injustice of the world. Because unless you experience, you never know what freedom is and what freedom of speech is, and what a great opportunities this country has to offer to people. Eventually now parts of Europe are taken away and being liberated from their old chains that kept them tied through those old regimes. But nowadays I think this was our greatest opportunity, and going through the law school and having that feeling since I was young, it made it happen. Massachusetts School of Law was the institution that offered us the legal opportunity. We embraced it, and we're so eager, and I'll be able to fight for people in the future, as I have thought when I was a young boy, and that's what I'm going to do when I become an attorney. There's no question about it. I'm still passionate, and I still love the legal profession as I used to. So
good. Aurora, do you think you have some special appreciation for being an attorney, not having been born in this country and not having, experienced some of what maybe we tend to take for granted here?
Well, yeah, I feel blessed. I feel blessed that I came a long journey, and I feel blessed that I am where I am right now. And I feel blessed for being here today because I've come a long way. I came to the USA 10 years ago. And
as a high school senior,
As a
right?
high school student, I finished my senior year in Valiant, Oklahoma. And there, I came as a foreign exchange student to exchange something about education and about the culture. But then when I saw, because compared to the system back home, you had to take, for example, back home, you had to take certain classes because that's the way it was. Here, students, they can choose the classes they want. They can choose the fields they can go into. So that's what I found, very attracting and very interesting, to stay for my higher education. So I applied in many different colleges back in the South, and I applied at Worcester State College because I had friends who were going there. So I decided to go, an extra mile and finish my higher education in the USA. Mm-hmm. And then you never know where life takes you. Then I met Dan, and life changed, and then we decided to go to law school, and here I am. But I do feel blessed. I really appreciate everything that this country has given to me, and like Dan said, the last of our achievements, Massachusetts School of Law. I really appreciate it.
Well, you guys keep saying that, but you should really understand is that you embody what the law school was founded for, is to give people who might not otherwise get the chance to actually go to law school, be a lawyer, whether they were born in this country or otherwise, who are really committed and willing to work hard. Because no one, in my recollection, in the 3 or 4 years that you guys have been here, worked as hard as I saw the two of you. I had you in class. I mean, there would never be a day that you wouldn't be prepared, or talking about the material. I mean, the fact is you've earned everything you guys have, and it's very, very well deserved. So you have my congratulations on that.
Thank you so much. And again, Dinkoin, that comes to the dedication, the level of seriousness that you put in law school. The first day we walked in MSL, it was a place that, in other way, it fitted us. It was our second home. As I said previously, everybody was friendly, and I totally understand, you know, the school's concept, and I stand behind MSL's philosophy 100%. I understand it now because we are immigrants. We have had our own difficulties. We have been able to surpass all the challenges with the foreign language, and you know, also the financial difficulties, and also other social economic difficulties that everybody should have. But being as a foreigner in America, as an immigrant, it's you know, it's more difficult.
Well,
than
there are
it
special
used to be.
challenges.
Right. So and again, when we started MSL, you know, we embraced the philosophy, and we stood after MSL because it's an institution that instills that kind of feeling. It's an institution that makes you feel home.
But it must give you an extraordinary amount of confidence, because even one or two of the obstacles you guys faced, some people would have walked away and said, no, it's just not worth it. But whatever the obstacle was, you just kept putting your head down and doing the work and coming back and doing it again and again. I mean, that has to instill a level of confidence in each of you that says, really, there's nothing I can't accomplish in the next 30 years.
Of course. I mean, I look myself now, and I look back 3 years or 4 years from now, and boy, what accomplishment. I mean, I'm a different person. The level of confidence, the level of knowledge, that love, that passion is still there. And that dedication and motivation, that work ethics that you create during the law school, you still carry it on. So that will help you, of course, in the future. But, you know, being so difficult, being an immigrant, of course, and having those challenges, you know, you just keep plugging through. You just keep pushing. That's the key. And we had our own team. You know, we had our own trials. Right, we had our own downtimes. I'm not saying that going to law school as husband and wife is going to be a piece of cake. It's easy. You have to work in law school as never before, never in your life. And I have, you know, I had my degree in Albanian University, Tirana University, which was the capital of Albania, in accounting. And then I went to Germany and came here, transferred to Anna Maria College. Mm-hmm. You know, I've been very serious about my work, and I've worked hard. But when I came to MSL, law school, you know, I created that work ethics and worked like never before. And even though we had our hard times and our trials, we just, you know, keep talking to each other, put our hair down, and work hard.
Well, I looked at your academic record. It doesn't seem like you hit too many bumps in the road. Both of you have done tremendously well. Aurora, what lesson did you learn about yourself? Not legal lessons. What lesson did you learn about yourself in law school?
Well, I learned a lot. So there are too many lessons that I learned. And personally, I think that everybody should go through law school, because the knowledge that you get, it's so broad and it's so deep that it makes you more confident going towards your future. Not necessarily everybody should become a lawyer, but I think everybody should go through law school, and there is so much to learn. And what I learned for myself is that I became a stronger person. Mm-hmm. That's what I learned. I mean, we went together. Maybe it was easier for us because I had somebody to turn to if I was down, and vice versa. But I learned, you know, that I became a stronger person. And anything, I mean, going towards our future, you know, we can do anything now because, I mean, we feel confident. I mean, we came a long journey, and
sure.
I mean, God is watching, you know, over us, and going forward we'll still be okay.
What do you hope to accomplish as a lawyer now?
Well, other than making money.
Bills have to be paid. Remember, you're a numbers
well,
guy.
Actually, I've heard this expression from many lawyers, other than making money, you know, or money is not. But to me, seriously, personally, it's not all about money. As I said, I've come a long way as Aurora. You know, I've had this feeling since I was young of becoming an attorney. And my, you know, my aim is that, you know, I have to relate to my communities, to the roots I came from, to the European communities in Massachusetts, and be able to help those people, because I know there are people who can't speak the language. There are people who want to integrate 100% with the system.
And you think that as a multilingual lawyer, you'll be able to much greater extent, help serve those immigrant populations out in that area?
Certainly, certainly, and I say that with certainty. You know, I have so many people, you know, as they know that I've been going to law school, and been asking because they are afraid to meet U.S. or American-born lawyer that do not speak the local language or their language originally. They are kind of reluctant to go because they don't speak the language. Mm-hmm. They don't have friends. They don't have many connections. They come from European countries, different part of Europe. And of course, that makes it very difficult. And it's a very, difficult proposition to walk it at, lawyer's office and, having no knowledge of English at all. And I know for sure that, so many people suffer because of that.
So we know lawyers dominate politics, government, finance, and in increasing numbers business. But law and medicine? Adam Beck graduated with honors from medical school, did a fellowship at the prestigious Massachusetts General Hospital here in Boston, and is a very successful surgeon. Why did he turn to law school?
Actually, it's an interesting story. Back in college, I don't know if you ever heard of the story of Steve Young, the quarterback, the football quarterback.
I know of Steve Young, the quarterback. I'm not sure which story.
He went to law school. He went to BYU when he was actually quarterbacking the 49ers. And I thought it was the neatest story. I was in college, and I was between going to medical school and law school. And the day after the Super Bowl, he won the Super Bowl, I think, in '94. The day after the Super Bowl, he had to be in class, and he wasn't able to celebrate. And he shows up in class the next day, and everybody's looking at him like, "What are you doing here?" And he was already 3 weeks into the semester. I thought, and if he can do it while he's playing professional football, I can do it.
What do you hope to accomplish as a lawyer, doctor, now?
I think, well, first I have to pass the bar.
Which I don't think is going to be much of a problem.
I think I'm probably going to do med mal cases, maybe try to get involved with mediation there too.
Has going to law school changed the way you practice medicine?
Absolutely.
Why? How so?
I dot the I's, I cross the T's. I'm so careful now about going over consent for surgery. So I think I've seen a lot of cases. I've also been an expert witness in several cases, and it just really changes the way you practice medicine after you see how the actual system works.
Now, when you're an expert witness, you testify on behalf of a plaintiff or a defendant in court, and you'd be lending your expertise as a doctor in that situation, right?
Correct.
How has law school helped you prepare for testifying in court and thinking of acting as an expert witness?
It, lets me, really it's forced me to look at both sides. Going in, I was always, on the doctor's side, pro-doctor, everything. And, there really are two sides to every story, two sides to every issue. So I think I try to be as fair as possible.
Do you think practicing medicine has allowed you to develop certain skills that you'll be able to use as a lawyer that will enhance your ability as a lawyer as well?
I think so. I think, in medicine, we really have to sit there and, we're trained to talk to patients, to just hear the entire story. Let the story just come out, unfold to you. And in medicine, we try not to direct the patient anywhere, any one direction. We just let them speak, and we're able to formulate a diagnosis. It's very similar to law in that way. We categorize in our brains where we want to go with a different set of symptoms. So sure, I think the two overlap in that way.
Now, a lot of people say that going to law school changes them and not always for the better. Has law school changed you for the better or worse, and how has it changed you?
It's definitely for the better. You know, it's actually relaxing to know that there's a process out there that if it works correctly, that things get accomplished in the legal system. Sometimes it takes a long time, but it's actually, in a lot of ways, doctors fear lawyers, and we're brought up that way to fear lawyers. So now, I don't fear them as much as I did.
I looked at your personal statement, and it talked a little bit about with the healthcare maze these days. It is important to understand regulations and laws and really be able to assist your clients, your patients, through some of that, and that you hoped law school training would provide that skill to you. Do you think it did?
I think it didn't hurt.
Yep.
I'm able to, before I started law school, I think there's a lot of little things you pick up, but I wasn't able to even read a contract before law school and make heads or tails of it. And now I can, pick up almost anything and read it and, decipher it without calling somebody. So, in that way, it's good.
Now, having been through medical school, you must have learned some things about yourself. I mean, obviously the competition, the hours and the commitment. Were there other lessons, though, beyond that you learned in law school about yourself that are new?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I went into law school. I didn't anticipate that I'd graduate with honors. I have a full-time medical practice. In medical school, I was really gung-ho. I went straight through college, medical school, residency, fellowship, and I was at the top of the class in medical school. It was very, very competitive. It was, medical school is very, very competitive. It was much more cutthroat than law school. And I thought that the atmosphere in law school was just much more relaxed, believe it or not.
Yeah.
And I'm here. I can't believe I was able to do it like that.
What was the most significant lesson you learned in law school about practicing law?
You really want to get cases over early. Nobody wins in a lawsuit.
Mm-hmm.
If there's a conflict, you try to negotiate and mediate it early. It's always better if you can talk things through up front and communicate with the other side, and if you can hear both sides of the issue, hopefully you can get to a compromise quickly, and it saves a lot of time and money and stress on everybody.
One traveled up from Philadelphia and the other from Yankee country. Well, Connecticut, but he's a Yankee fan in Red Sox country now. But they became best of friends, and they competed in trial advocacy competitions against some of the best law schools in the country, beating them time and time again. So how did that come to be?
For me, it's always been about law school ever since I was a little kid. They sort of, because I was so talkative always, they kind of had a nickname. They had a nickname for me, and it started with my grandmother, and it just kind of, everyone would just call me, oh, you're going to be a lawyer, you're going to be a lawyer. And when it kind of became a part of me, and it always was that. And eventually when I, grew up, and it was just sort of the only road I ever saw for me, there was just really nothing else.
College never really was planned. I wanted to join the Marines, so on September 12th, 2001, I had an appointment, but because the day before was obviously 9/11, I chose not to go. So after that, I didn't know what to do, so I decided to go to college. I wanted to be a cop at first, and then after taking some of the classes, I had to do a couple ride-alongs. I knew sitting around all day wasn't necessary for me, so I took a couple of law classes, fell in love with it, and then law school was obviously the next progression after that.
And now, during law school, you've been an EMT and the like, so you're still involved in some way with law enforcement and that type of activity. How does that fit, as you see, in the future with respect to, how has that helped you with respect to your anticipated legal career?
As working as an EMT, I had the opportunity to work with many different types of people, both as my partners and the patients that I had, dealing from everything for psych issues to the questions of murders and homicides. So with that, I got to use both my people skills and be able to talk people into doing necessarily what is best for them or what I want them to do. So doing that allowed me to use different aspects of my mind, as well as get people to do what I needed them to do in certain situations.
Now, neither of you are from this area, the Boston area initially. Neil, you come from Connecticut, which is Yankee country.
I am a Yankees fan.
And now you must be a Red Sox fan since you've been here so long. But why come all the way from Connecticut up to here to law school?
Well, bringing my Yankee pride up here, one of my biggest regrets is not going away to college. I stayed home, I commuted. I do regret doing that. So I came up here as a chance to get away for a while. And besides the sporting teams, I have fallen in love with it. So I do want to stay up here for the future.
You anticipate staying here after graduation now?
Yes.
Now, you came from even farther away to come to law school. You're from the Philadelphia area.
I am.
And good luck with your Flyers, of course.
Thank you.
And your Eagles. But that's a significant difference and even more of a, to some extent, a cultural change to come all the way up to New England for law school.
It was a change, and it wasn't a very easy decision considering my entire family stayed back there, and that was tough for me to leave them. I really haven't been away from home before this. But like I said, it's always been law for me, and once I received that acceptance letter, it seemed a little bit easier to just kind of travel north.
Now, can I ask you, because you're both from a distance away, but my recollection is that the two of you somehow seemed to me to bond virtually from the first week of law school, and so you've developed a second family as it is at the law school in this area. How does that come about?
Your observations are actually correct. It seems that the people that I still hang out with 3 years later, the people I met in my first year of law school, and it really was just about getting people that we knew we could get along with, hanging out outside of school as well as in school, and it was good to find people that could relate to us and make the, corny law jokes and people would get it rather than try and, relate to people that we already knew that were not necessarily in law school. And it was just, I guess, a great way to also bond with the area as well, whereas otherwise it probably would have just been torture staying away from home as much.
I came up here knowing no one. She came up here knowing no one. So our first week is when we met, and at that point, we both knew that we left our past behind us to a certain extent. So at that point, we both had to start anew. So it kind of just started where we sat the first class, first Civ Pro Day. From then, we kind of started talking to people around us. Amy happened to sit behind me. So 3 years later, here we still are, one of the best friends we could have.
Neil, what's the best lesson you learned about yourself in law school?
To be myself. A lot of times before law school, everything was just status quo. Just go with life, it'll come to you. And throughout law school, I learned that you actually have to go out and get things sometimes. Not everything was handed to you on a silver platter. You actually have to work for it, fight for it. And at the end of the day, you need to only be happy to yourself.
What do you think?
I actually learned that I had made the right decision, that this was for me and that this is what I do want to do. Because up until a certain point, I still was doubting that. And even before I got to law school, I was thinking, is this really for me? As much as I want it, is it really for me? And I think that's the one important thing that I learned, that this is for me.
And you had mentioned the trial teams. I mean, you both had tremendous amount of success with the trial advocacy program. You've been in California and you've been at various national finals in New Orleans and elsewhere. Tell me a little bit about your experiences with the trial advocacy program here.
Well, for me, you take evidence class in evidence. You have no idea what evidence is until you have to stand up the first time, yell objection within a couple seconds, formulate in your head why that objection is and why someone should agree with you. I mean, I thought I knew evidence in evidence class, but I realized the first day when I actually had to listen to questions, formulate in my head, and do it on my feet, that I was starting to learn what evidence was. So through that, I got the confidence to stand up to what I say, even if the judge questions me, of why he doesn't agree with me. And even if I'm wrong, I can still prove my point to myself, and hopefully prove it to someone else who will say sustained at the end of the day.
What do you think?
I think what was significant about the trial team and taking part in the trial team, aside from bonding with the team members, what was important was mostly, I suppose, standing up in court and getting your voice heard. And that was a big part for me because I really didn't think it was as comfortable as it turned out to be. But it was also that you really don't understand practicing law in law school, where you're just reading, cases, briefing them, writing memos. In the courtroom is really where you would essentially practice law. And it gave me a feel for what it's actually going to be out there eventually when I get to it.
Now, with respect to the competition, what about when you go out and compete against other national law schools like Syracuse and Harvard and schools like that that are in these competitions? What type of value do you take away from those experiences, the actual competition against other law schools? Neil?
I know for me personally, you can put anyone else at the other table next to me. I am not afraid of them, no matter what school they say they're from, what their background is. We practiced and prepared so much. No one else could have done it more than us. Put anyone at that table, I would have taken anyone. I had no problem with any school. So the competition was just another team to us. We worked so hard. We knew what we knew, and no one knew it better than us.
What do you think, Amy? I mean, you guys ended up with New England champions this year and competed at the Nationals in New Orleans, which was, I imagine, a terrific experience.
It was, absolutely. I think the thrill of a competition is perhaps what is best about the trial competitions that we've taken part in, but it was also the fact that not wanting to lose a side, I always like to put my best in everything, and knowing that there was someone across the table that didn't want me to achieve that and to accomplish that kind of just sparked it even more to just want to go out there and show that I can do this, I'm the best, and if you're going to try to take that from me, then you're going to work hard at it.
I mean, do you feel that those competitions helped hone your skills at advocacy and really that you do have the ability to compete with the very best law graduates at this point?
Well, I think it did more than hone them. It created them at first. It made them first. And then through the year and a half that we were in it, I suppose that was where it was honed. And also, as Neil was saying about evidence, where you really don't know evidence. As hard as you study and as much as you memorize, you really don't know it until you actually sit there with a case and try to figure out how you're going to get something in, how you're going to keep something out. But it absolutely honed both that and just the skills that you need in trial as an attorney.
Neil, is that what your future brings for you now? Do you see yourself as an advocate in court on behalf of individuals?
Yeah, I do want to end up doing courtroom work, either civil or criminal. At this point, I haven't really decided which area I would like to go into, but courtroom is definitely where I want to be at the end of the day.
Amy, same thing? Or what type of law do you expect to go into at this point?
Well, I really can't see myself anywhere other than a courtroom, to be honest with you.
It's the talker.
Part of it. But I really haven't decided what area of law I would like to practice, but I think knowing myself, I probably wouldn't want to limit myself to that necessarily. So for now, it's kind of a open-ended question.
What do you hope to accomplish as a lawyer in the next 30 or 40 years of your life?
Well, for me right now, practicing law is about helping people when they need it the most without necessarily, holding a badge or a scalpel, and it's just one thing that I could use what I know and what I can do to help the people that are perhaps at their most desperate at some points, when they need justice, when they need, someone to help them when no one else can. So, it's always been about helping people with my skills and my knowledge.
Everyone always has the good lawyer joke for them, that the lawyers are always fill in the blank. With me, I hope to someday be able to change that. Like everyone needs that one lawyer in their life, whether or not they're the good lawyer or the bad lawyer. Hopefully when people think of me later in life, they think of me as that lawyer who could help them, who wasn't the stereotypical joke lawyer that a lot of people have in their mind.
Many people say that law school changes the person that graduated from law school. They're different from the person that started 3 years ago. And I think there's no doubt that everyone who goes through the law school experience is different. Some people say not for the better. Has law school made you better in some ways, or a better person? And that's what I'm really looking at here, a better person. So how has law school changed you, I guess, is the question. Amy first.
If it were possible, it probably made me more determined with my goals for life and my career and all that. I did see the possibilities expanding once I became familiar with the law and the areas of law, because I really wasn't too familiar with it, having, no background to it. And just knowing all the possible ways that I could help, not necessarily just in a courtroom, but outside of it, just the possibilities expanding. And I think it has made me a better person to some extent, and it's also made me a little bit more mature, I suppose, but mostly more determined.
Neil, how has law school changed you?
Like with me, I think law school made me the person I am. When I entered law school, I was 22 years old. I was young. I didn't really know anything about life. I never lived on my own. And now I'm 25, live on my own. I'm looking to get jobs. It's made me the person that I am, and the better. It hasn't changed me for the worse at all. Now I may stand up to people more, but I think that's what I need to do in life.
Where do you get the drive to actually change yourself, or at least find the confidence that that should have been present all along in your many talents in a year and a half? Because that's a relatively short period of time that the lawyers that sit before me today are very different from the law student that sat in that first year class.
The first year class, I was this quiet little 22-year-old kid who didn't know who he was or anything. We're now, the first competition, the first time I've given my opening statement, I walked up there, I was trembling tremendously. I have no idea what I said or what was coming out of my mouth. Now, the people in the box, whether it's 3, 12, or 6, whoever's sitting in that box, they're either going to like me or they're not going to like me. I am who I am. So at that point, the confidence comes from inside, just to be true to myself and just know that some are going to like me, some aren't going to like me. But at the end of the day, this is me. And I wish I knew that earlier in life, but I didn't. So.
but it wasn't that expensive of a lesson.
Exactly.
I think it helps not having an option, because I really don't think that no was really an option when the opportunity was presented to me. So I was right there. But it was also, to some extent, because I knew that this is what I wanted to do. And if it wasn't for me, I had to know that before I was actually out there gambling with someone's future, or whatever the case may be. So I figured that doing it in law school, seeing if I could actually do the mini version of it, whether it was possible for me to go ahead and do it. So I just told myself that if you want to do this, you have to start somewhere, and that somewhere was here.
You wouldn't think that cops and lawyers go together, but surprisingly they do. While they may be adversaries in the courtroom, in the classroom they become colleagues. It's amazing how one television show can have an effect on a person. But our next guest knew what he wanted to be from watching one of television's classic shows.
Well, going to law school was always something that I wanted to do. I can remember back being a small child watching episodes of Perry Mason. And when I saw Perry Mason, I said, I want to be an attorney. But more than that, it was a way out of the inner city for me. Growing up as in a poor family, single-parent home in Dorchester, Roxbury, Mattapan, we didn't come from very much at all. And it was a way for me to climb out, if you will, of living in poverty, and a way also to help others climb out once I became an attorney. So that's really what it boiled down to me, in terms of making the decision to finally go to law school and accomplish getting it done.
How do you juggle the multiple roles you have? I mean, you're the assistant chief of police at Public University, and you're also here many hours in the library studying law. How do you juggle all of that?
It's really making commitment to the process, and I made a commitment when I began law school to get through this process and to not only just get through it, but to do it well enough so that when it came time to taking the bar exam, I was prepared. So I made a lot of sacrifices, a lot of personal sacrifices, gave up a number of different things, but they were all for the final goal, and the big picture which was to graduate from law school, take the bar exam, and become a practicing attorney here in Massachusetts. And again, flexibility with my job, my employers, they also supported me in my goal and mission, if you will, to attain my Juris Doctorate and also to pass the bar exam.
So it does take a supportive employer to be able to juggle some of this as well.
Absolutely, absolutely, a very supportive employer.
Well, we'll give them those kudos.
Yes.
Then, huh? What did you learn about yourself in law school? What lesson do you take away from this about you yourself, not about the law or anything else?
Well, I'm smiling because you and I often have conversations about the law, and especially more specifically criminal law. But I think one of the things it's really taught me is to have an open mind and to go into cases and people's particular situations with an open mind. You know, oftentimes in law enforcement, it's very easy to rush to judgment when you're dealing with criminal defendants all the time, or when you're going to a certain house that you've been to on a number of times, a repetitive basis. So this process has taught me really to keep an open mind and to look at where people come from and what are the circumstances behind their particular situation, and to go with an open mind and really kind of look at it from their perspective rather than just coming in a very narrow focused view.
You know, over the years I've talked to a number of different law enforcement officials who have attended law school, and they've told me that they believe that attending law school has made them a better police officer or other law enforcement agent. Do you find that that's true?
Without a doubt. You know, especially one of the other responsibilities I have is I oversee our criminal investigations unit, and oftentimes we have, or the detectives will have, questions regarding criminal procedure or the elements of criminal law. And with my education and experience and my training here at Mass School of Law, it's helped me to key in on some of the more controversial topics and issues, and then go back and share that information, whether it's in a roll call briefing with the officers and department-wide, or whether it's in particular with our Criminal Investigations Bureau. So it definitely has helped me to become a much more well-rounded police officer and looking at things from a number of different perspectives.
Tell me about your experiences in the advocacy program. I know you've been to LA and San Francisco, you've been to various regional competitions and national competitions around the country. Tell me what you've learned from those experiences.
I think the biggest thing for me is it's given me a sense of self-confidence, in the sense that, you know, people look at MSL in comparison to some of the other law schools as David and Goliath. And I have to tell you that, in my opinion, I think we receive some of the best education, teaching, and training here at Massachusetts School of Law. So
I like to think so.
Yes. So to go and compete against you know, some of the more well-known law schools.
Last term, you competed against Syracuse, you competed against Harvard, and your teams went toe-to-toe and qualified for nationals.
And that's just it. We stood toe-to-toe with them. And I think those schools were even shocked and surprised at how well taught we were, how well prepared we were, and how well we litigated the particular hypo or fact pattern that we had in all instances. So it's really given me a great sense of self-confidence, the ability to understand the law, and then argue it from an advocacy standpoint. And I think, you know, some students don't have that opportunity. So I consider myself to be blessed to have worked with a number of other very skilled classmates of mine, to receive some very good coaching.
And thanks.
And to also have gone and to be able to have participated in these different competitions and to learn from others and kind of adjust your style and look at things that you may want to, you know, do differently, or things I should do differently. So it really has prepared me in a number of different ways.
Tell me what you hope to accomplish as a lawyer as you leave here.
I think first and foremost is really to go out and gain the practical experience needed to become a very good attorney, and then to use that experience to go back and to help others who don't have access to the criminal justice system, who live on a very limited means and don't have the access to an attorney to get answers that they need. So I really want to go back and give back to the community from which I came from. And you and I both being Dorchester boys.
That's right.
That's an area that I'd like to go back and practice in and be able to give back to the community.
So after all these years in law enforcement, do you see yourself doing criminal defense work as well?
Well, I've often said that that's an area in the road I wouldn't go down, but I have to say that if, you know, someone comes to my doorstep, you know, often you hear sometimes you can't always choose your client chooses you. So I can definitely see myself doing that if needed and when called upon, yes.
Huh, it's a change of stripes, huh?
It is.
A lot of people say that law school changes a law student over the course of their 3 or 4 years of study. And not everyone says the change is for the good. Do you think law school has changed you? Well, has law school changed you, and has it been for the better or worse, as you would see it?
In terms of for the worse, by a good 30 pounds, it's changing. But in terms of for the better, absolutely. You know, I can remember starting out here 3 years ago in August, and I was a much different person then than I am now. To be able to come, sit, and exchange ideas with a number of different people who come from various walks in lives, to hear their particular stance on an argument and to hear them argue their particular stance, and then for me to, again, in an advocacy setting, argue my particular stance, it's really helped me to, again, like I mentioned before, be open-minded and to consider all points and views. And then, you know, if your argument at the end of the day doesn't win, knowing that you were at least prepared to make that argument and you did the best that you could possibly do.
So if you had the same decision to make all over again, you'd be here starting next August? Would you do it again?
I would do it again. I would do it again. You know, I've become so involved and immersed in MSL that it's changed my life in a number of ways, and to have been blessed to meet a number of different people who have supported me in getting through this process, it's made a huge impact on my life, and to have that kind of support, I can't see how anyone would not want to come to a school as giving as this place is.
Let me ask you a little bit about that, the giving part of it. You're the president of the Barristers Organization, and want to tell us a little bit about what the Barristers here at MSL does? Sure, community service. I mean, we've been blessed in our lives in a number of different respects. And because we've been blessed, we keep in mind that it's important to give back to the community. So we do a number of community-based events. One of the things that we do typically is every first Wednesday of the month we go down to the YMCA here in Lawrence, and we provide meals for the less fortunate. And I have to tell you, they look forward to seeing us every first Wednesday. Not everyone looks forward to seeing a lawyer.
That's true. This is very true. But I will also tell you, though, that we've made some great friendships with a number of the men down there, and friendships that I think will be lasting bonds. So I think that's been a huge part of the whole process, is you're looking to give back, and through the process you make bonds with people whom you probably may have never would have crossed paths in life with. So that, to me, is very important.
Thanks for joining us. As we leave you, our guests all lend their advice on how to make it through law school. So until next time, keep your head up, believe in yourself, and always strive to reach beyond your grasp.
Adam P. Beck, MD, magna cum laude.
You really have to be disciplined. I think really forced myself. I'd come home, I'd eat, work out, and just set this amount of time aside to study, and I'd say, this is what I have to learn in this amount of time. Well, let's go do it.
Clonetta, Kimberly, Patricia, Neely, cum laude.
So you have to have perseverance. You have to have a passion. Passion has to drive you through law school and through life. That everyone should have a passion for something. So you have to have a passion. You have to work hard. You have to be dedicated.
Artemis Demetriadis, cum laude.
I think how to make the most out of law school is just stick through it, believe in yourself, and be prepared to make decisions that you won't necessarily like, but that you would know are necessary for you, whether you're going to stay in law school or not.
Neil Joseph Judd.
My biggest piece of advice would be make sure this is what you want. It's a lot of work, it's a lot of hard work. And if it isn't what you want 100%, you're never going to succeed. And the other thing I have to say is have friends, find them fast, and keep them close.
Aurora Turbellari, magna cum laude.
Find out what works and then stick by it. And find out the group of people, you know, who you can associate and argue with and talk about law. And this is how you progress.
Daniel Turbellari.
You know, don't get lazy. You know, do the work from day one, take it seriously, it's very important. Stick to your program. Sometimes you feel like lost, sometimes you feel humbled. That's okay, that's law school. That's how it's supposed to be.
Our student trustee, Shane Rodriguez, cum laude.
You know, you're going to put in half the time or half the effort, you're not going to succeed, or you're going to struggle in succeeding getting through the program. If you put in the time, you make the sacrifices that you need to make, the 3 years and the 4 years, they really do go by very quickly. And at the end, you come out a well-taught, trained student who is ready to take the bar exam and then pass the bar and practice law.